We're going to go over the process of changing out the brake lines on a 280ZX. This is the process for 1979 through August 81. I've already done the job, but I'm going to go over the process here because I ran into a couple little gotchas and have figured out some things that might make it easier for you. First of all, just to review what the brake lines look like, these are the ones that I took off. So I just want to point out the two front ones are identical in length. There's one male, one female end. On the left rear, you're going to have one the same length, but it's got two female connectors. And then on the right rear, you're going to have one that is also male and female in one end, but it's shorter than the other. So just make sure those are the ones that we're putting on. I'm going to show you now. You don't need to take the wheels off, either the front or the back. You can get at everything from underneath the car, so you can either put it up on ramps like I did real quick here. You can jack it up on jack stands. I prefer the ramps because it gives me a lot more room to work underneath, or you can just put it up on a lift if you're lucky enough to have one of those. In order to get the original equipment off, if that's what you have and that's what you're replacing, you're going to need 3 open crescent wrenches, a 19 millimeter, 17 millimeter, and a 10 millimeter. And then just check your new equipment and see if they're the same size. The 19 should always match, and the 10 is for the part that comes off that's going to still be on the car. But your male ends here, again in the OEM one, these are 17. The Techno Toy Tuning ones I got were 15. Sorry, they were 14. But again, that's just going to be based on whatever kit you get. So here we are starting with the right rear, and you can see this is the new line, this braided line that I have in here. And it's not actually near the wheel, it's more towards the center of the car. And the female end connects here, the male end connects there. What you're going to want to do on your original line is loosen up this little 10 millimeter bolt on this hard line on the other side of the female connector. Just break it loose, but don't undo it all the way. You don't want anything leaking out of there quite yet. And then you're going to also break loose your original connector on this side. And we just want to get everything loosened because once we pull it off, we're going to want to put the new one on as quickly as possible so that we don't leak a whole bunch of fluid all over the place. We're going to bleed the system anyway, so it's not about preventing us from having to do that. We're going to have to do that. We just don't want to make a big mess. So this one is probably going to be pretty tight. I was only really able to break these loose off of the original equipment using vice grip. But it is just a 10 millimeter hex. It's just that mine just kept slipping, so vice grip worked out better for me. I'm going to show you what you're going to do after you loosen this one up. There's a couple other things we got to take off right here. Once you've gotten both those broken loose here and here, you'll notice mine's already starting to drip. There's this clip here that you then need to work out, and you can use a flathead screwdriver and kind of pry away at it from the back. You might be able to just get some leverage behind it and just kind of like pull this clip out. So once this clip is out, we'll be able to get enough play here, and we're going to disconnect these two pieces here. So now that I have this bottom part disconnected, to get the top part out, we can just turn the entire cable, and we're going to rotate it off of this fitting right here, and then we'll take the whole thing out. The cable's out. Here's one of the little gotchas that I messed up the first time. On the male ends of all of these, there is a little washer, and it's very easy just to lose sight of this. It just kind of falls off as you're unscrewing this, and I didn't even notice it until later. I saw them on the ground. So make sure that you recover this washer and put it back over the male threaded end and put that in place in your new line before you reinstall it. When you reinstall, you're always going to screw in the the male side first into the female socket, and you're going to get that in there first and tightened up. Then you'll work on this end. Good. When you're reinstalling the female ends, just go ahead and get the nut seated into place. There's two little nubs there that keep it from rotating, and go ahead and put this bracket in to hold everything in. Then this will just be very firm, and then all you have to do is screw this end with a 10 millimeter wrench all the way back in. And by the way, while you're down here at each wheel, this is also a really good time to put a 10 millimeter deep socket on the end of your valve here, the bleeder valve, and just break it loose to make sure that it can move. That'll help you out later when you have to bleed the brakes. Also, again, because if it hasn't been bled in a long time, who knows, what the previous owner did or when they did it. This might be seized up a little bit, so while you're under here, go ahead and break that loose. So now we look at the left side and the rear, and pretty straightforward. Here's this line just to show you female and female on both ends. So again, just break loose both of these 10 millimeter bolts right here, and then once you've done that, you can remove the clips. There's one on each of these. There's one of these clips. You're just going to pull that out and then just replace your line. Then we'll move on to the front. Here we are in the front, just showing you where the connections are. So in the caliper, the male end of the cable sticks into the caliper there, and then the female end connects to that line over there. Removal is the exact same process we did in the rear. Left and right and the front are identical, so I'm not going to go through all that, but just remember on each of these male ends there's that little washer that you need to make sure you put back in when you reconnect your lines. All 4 brake lines are replaced. Just want to point out that in between each line I kind of came up here and checked the master and slave cylinders and topped them off, just because for some reason I just didn't want it to run all the way down. But now we're going to go ahead and bleed the brakes, and I'm not going to make a video for that. That's a pretty basic process. Hopefully everybody understands how to bleed their own brakes.